other difficult people in your life. And I'm very dedicated to that. And before I start, I want to introduce the person you might have heard me chatting with. Don is my good friend who lives in Tucson, Arizona, and he's a GoToWebinar expert, and he's been teaching me a lot, so he's going to hang out with us today. So if I need anything, he's right there. So that should be a really good situation to have an expert on here.
It's nice to be here with you.
Yes, thank you, Don. Don Wells from Tucson, Arizona. And we have people coming in as we're speaking from all over, and that's the beauty of webinars, is we can connect instantly anywhere around the world. So I'm going to start by introducing myself and tell you a little bit about my work. I have been a speaker and an author for a long time. I am putting up here just so you can get a sampling of the kind of audiences I've spoken to. I'm an author that has spoken to over 300 businesses and organizations. I've been on over 70 radio and TV talk shows. If you already know me, you know this about me, but for those of you that haven't met me, I have done a lot of work in almost every industry. I've worked with hospitals, I've worked with physician practices, insurance companies, retail, banks, construction. I've worked really in almost every industry, and so it's given me a really good bird's eye view of all the intricate details and dynamics going on in workplaces. And the interesting thing is, throughout the United States and Canada, what I see is, although the industries might be different, the dynamics are so similar. And so I started really paying attention to what was making people so unhappy, and started really trying to listen to the people that I dealt with. And what I discovered was, they've told me things they were afraid to tell their leaders or their managers. And so literally one night in 2000, I woke up with a very clear picture of the workplace, and I wrote my first book. And that book, I described the ego drama and the pain and suffering that I see going on in the workplace. And I'm going to talk a little more about that. But just to give you some credentials in case you don't know me, I've done workshops, and I have had some really great authors review my work and give me these testimonials. Gerald John Palsky, that wrote Letting Go of Fear, one of my favorite books, says that my book puts relationships in the workplace under the microscope and offers practical, helpful, spiritual nuggets as ways of healing the workplace. And Wally Amos, you all know famous Amos, he believes it's a very important book to help bring in harmony. I did a workshop for IKEA, which is a really wonderful international company, and the CEO here in Seattle told me that he really, I'm just paraphrasing for you, but he really recognized that to the workplace and your home life, all the same principles apply, and that you can do it every day in your life, and it'll affect all parts of your life. So what we're going to do today, hopefully I want to show you ways how you can find clarity in a very confusing and stressful relationship, either in the workplace or it could be your home. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. Relationships are relationships. What makes some more significant than others is the intensity of the relationship. So in our families, we care a lot about the people, our spouses, our children, and so because it brings up more fear, it can be a relationship that can be stressful. It causes pain, but it also causes great joy in our family. Well, the same thing holds true in the workplace. Our coworkers, and especially our bosses, can bring up a lot of pain because we are very beholding and very much needing our job, so at least we believe we are very needing our job, and so it can be fearful too. So a second thing I want to do is help all of us to face our hidden fears and give up the unnecessary anxiety, particularly in the workplace, and how to find your own inner authority and your boundless freedom, and how to be fearless in future encounters. So, just in case you're wondering if you're alone in this situation, having a boss from hell, the recent Gallup report announced just recently on the state of the workplace in the United States that out of 100 million people, that's a lot of people, 70% are disengaged. And I got the title for this webinar from the Gallup's chairman and CEO, Jim Clifton, because what he said, of the 70% of people who are disengaged in the workplace, the bottom 20% have bosses from hell. And these bosses make them so miserable that they roam the halls spreading discontent. And then the other 50 million, which is about 50% of the American workers in the country, are just not engaged. They're just kind of present, but they're not inspired by their work or their managers, according to CEO and chairman of Gallup, Jim Clifton. So you're not alone if you're feeling this way. It's a common and unfortunately tragic situation that people spend 40 plus hours a week, oftentimes having difficult relationships with their boss. So how do we understand it? What I want to do today is give you some real tools that can get you started on understanding relationships and putting a new light on it and help you develop some confidence and find some options to deal with the relationships. So let me tell you a little bit about what I see. After working in all these different industries, what I see is actually a web of egos battling, competing for power and validation. I see reactions and counter-reactions. Now, a reaction is not a response. A reaction is not powerful. It's reacting to something else outside yourself. And then a counter-reaction just accelerates the dynamics of the interaction. So think about the times when you're in a relationship. Are you, and you feel difficulty, are you coming from your own sense of power, or are you simply reacting and counter-reacting? That's a key question to ask yourself. I also see one-upmanship, each person wanting to outdo the other person, try to be better than the Joneses in the family life, but in the workplace, it's often vying for titles, other kinds of props, a window office, an important position. And the important thing I want you to discover today is it's really not reality. It's an illusion. In fact, I say an organizational chart does not really define leadership. It may give people titles, but it doesn't really truly define leadership. It actually gives us all different roles in the workplace, but they're just based on that one stage. And really, it's a matter of perspective. It's a judgment, how you view the workplace and how you view other people. So I'm going to ask you to think about this. Have you ever been to a really good movie? And it's so good that while you're watching it, you're completely involved. The hero does something great and you cheer him or her on. Something sad or poignant happens and you find yourself crying. You may have gone to a really good movie and been so involved that even after the movie was over, you were still asking yourself, I wonder what's going to happen next. Or you might have even been crying and having tears and feeling embarrassed. Well, what happened is you were so caught up in the movie, that became your reality. It felt like it was real. Well, I'm going to pose a question. What if the workplace drama is not really real? It's not reality. What if it's a stage? What if you're just one of the parts on the stage? And what keeps it alive, what upholds the whole drama, is that everybody's playing out parts. I'm going to give you a story that'll illustrate how much we believe things that aren't really true. I was a volunteer worker to work at Eastern Hospital, a place for mentally challenged people. They were basically limited in their capacities, but they were wonderful, happy people. But they really, a lot of them had, delusional feelings and beliefs, and they weren't in reality. So we had a day that I went out there and helped them. Then they were going to have a parade, and it was very exciting for all the residents that were at this mental institute. It was a beautiful day, and I looked up, and on the front porch of this important building, there was a man standing there in a suit, and he looked very powerful. And I thought, that must be the CEO or the executive director of the whole hospital, the whole institute. And I watched him walk down the steps and walk down the sidewalk, and he stopped and chatted with a few people. And then a little bit later, I went over and helped some other people get started, and then the parade began. And we all sat there and watched the parade, and at the end we were going to have a celebration with food, and the people in the parade were the residents or the patients at the hospital. So we watched the parade, and they had trikes and bikes and wagons and all kinds of things. Even though these were adults, they were doing things that made them happy, and some of it was very childlike. And along came a great big wagon, and there in it was the man in the suit that I had just seen walk across the lawn that I was sure was the CEO. And I asked somebody, wow, he really gets into being with everybody. I was sort of surprised to see that important person. And they said, he's another patient. He's another resident here at this state mental institute. He so believed that he was powerful and dressed the part so well, I believed it. So when you look at your workplace, look around. How many people are playing the part that the title on their door or on their business card says? How often are you playing a part? So just think about that, because all of us want to be loved and appreciated and recognized and validated. But when it gets to the point that we're hurting other people, it's no longer a valid way to live your life. So I want to explain to you a way that you can break through the illusion and break through the drama and understand better what's going on. Because when you're on the stage and when you're one of the actors, you have a hard time seeing the drama. That's why as an outside consultant, I could see what was going on. But when you're in it, it's hard to see. And I've been in it. I have been a marketing director for many different organizations before I was a consultant. And even after I was a consultant, I went back into some very complex workplaces where I was the marketing director and got to experience the depth of how much we can get involved in the drama or the culture of a workplace, and especially if it's not healthy, how fearful it can be and painful. So what I want you to do is think about the last time you had a conflict in the workplace. I just did this workshop today at noon for a law firm, and I asked the question, and then 1 minute later I said, how many had a conflict in the last week? And every hand went up. So whatever came to your mind, that is the best example of a conflict that you had. But for our purposes today, it would probably be good to think about your boss, if that's your real problem. Although it could be just another coworker, or actually it could be your spouse, or a child, or a neighbor, or it could be somebody even at the church, somebody in your social group. We all get hooked by other people, but what I want to really share with you today is not only how to get past the hook, but to find some peace and joy and inner confidence in your own inner authority and find the gift that's actually occurring. So what was the most recent event? And I want you to think about it. It was something that caused you a fight or flight symptom or reaction. And you know, that is an original primitive emotion that we all have, fight or flight. And what happens when we're in that state of mind, when somebody walks up to us who's a threat, Originally, it was if a snake crawled up to us or we were in real physical danger. But today, we still get the fight or flight response even from an emotional situation. And what happens when we're in that state of fear and anxiety, you know, that moment the person that you are so afraid is going to say something to upset you, tells you they want to have a meeting with you, or let's get together, we have something to talk about, or they just out and out criticize you, and you get that feeling of fight or flight, you have a physiological response. Your adrenaline starts flowing through your body. It causes your blood pressure to elevate. It causes the hormones cause your muscles to get tighter. Your jaw can get clenched. Your eyes dilate because your fear reaction is to be prepared. But when you're in that state, it can also make your brain get very fuzzy. You're strong, but you can get very fuzzy. So it's not a great place to be when you are trying to deal with a situation that's actually a relationship issue. So I want you to think about the last time that you felt that in your gut feeling, and I want you to ask yourself, how were you feeling? Now, you might say initially something like I was mad, or it wasn't fair, but I want you to think even deeper than that. How were you feeling emotionally? Were you feeling disempowered? Were you feeling hopeless? Were you feeling that this isn't fair? Were you feeling sad? Were you feeling like a child? Were you feeling like you'd like to cry? Or were you feeling you'd like to sock somebody? But whatever the feelings were in the workplace, you usually have to suppress them because you're an adult. You don't want to look like a child that's about to cry. You don't want to feel hurt. Beneath your feelings, there may be even more deeper feelings, like feeling shamed or feeling that somebody doesn't respect you or care about you. You know, Mother Teresa said the greatest disease is not leukemia or heart disease. It's the feeling or fear of not being needed or wanted. And when somebody triggers a hopeless feeling in you, it could very easily cause you to feel shamed, weak, small, unimportant. And when you feel that way, it's very hard to respond in an authentic and appropriate and style that can actually change the relationship. So then the next question I want to ask you is, what were you afraid would happen? Were you afraid you might not get a promotion? Were you afraid they wouldn't value you at work? Were you afraid that nobody respected the work you do? What was your real inner fear? Because the important thing to know is the fear is already in you. There's some fear that they are triggering that's causing you to react this way. Because the same behavior to someone else might not feel threatening. So the more you can do this deep work to look at inside yourself, what were you afraid was happening, the more you will be able to move through this and grow and be stronger and evolve as a human being that has integrity and confidence and inner authority. Okay, now I want you to think about how you would like this to be different the next time, and I'm going to give you the keys. This is just a summary, and I have a lot more information I can share with you later. But what we need to do when this situation happens is stop our ego, the image we have of ourselves, from reacting. Because once we do that, we've lost, and we aren't going to learn the deep lesson, and we're not going to make the powerful choices that we could make if we calm down. So I'm going to suggest you visualize the same event occurring. The same person is coming up to you. You're having that same panic feeling, that gut feeling. And this time, before you react, no matter what happens, you're going to stop, you're going to pause, and you're going to take a deep breath. deep breath, because breathing calms us down. It's the source of patience, calmness, connecting with our inner power is through our breath. That's why meditation and mindfulness work. That's why even yoga can help us become more present, because we learn to breathe. We just need to breathe. Most of us aren't breathing deeply. We're breathing very shallowly and quickly, and it's the opposite of calm and patient when we're in that state. Then after you take this deep breath, I want you to think of a phrase that you can say to yourself that's calming and empowering. It could be, I am confident. It could be, I am strong. It could be, I'm authentic. But you need to choose a word that feels very resonating with you, that makes you feel strong. And then say to yourself these things. I'm not a puppet. I don't have to be a victim. This other person, this is his or her script. Remember I said it's like a stage? The other person, whether it's your spouse or your boss or a coworker, is operating from their own script that they developed and learned for many, many years. It didn't just happen today when they're talking to you. But because it's their script, we don't have to make it our script. If you were a live audience, I'd say, do you all understand that? But I think you do. This is their script. It doesn't have to be my script. And in fact, the truth is, that person, if there were another person sitting in the chair or standing in front of them in the same, say, defined role that you are in, or the position in the workplace that you are in, that person would act exactly the same to that person. So ultimately what I'm saying is it's not personal. It feels personal because it's hooking something in you that you're afraid of, but it is not personal. It is their script. And if they're acting in a fearful way or a fear-causing way, there's something in them that's fearful, because people that are authentic don't have to scare and overpower other people. Then say to yourself, I have my own inner authority, my authentic self. We talked about today at the workshop, we all have a deeply powerful, unique inner self that is capable of dealing with every situation that comes before you. We have it. We sense it's there, but somehow we give it up and let it go when there are people that we think are more powerful than us. But in reality, nobody's more powerful than you, except maybe by an assigned organizational chart. But that's just a temporary status. It's not your authentic self. So when you connect with your authentic self, you don't have to react. You're free. And say this to yourself, I'm free to respond in truth, but without blame. Because what happens when you blame somebody else? Well, the minute you blame somebody else, they have to defend themselves, and they'll want to blame you back. So that just accelerates any kind of interaction. So the freedom comes when you can speak your truth by responding from your authentic self, but without blame. And then a real key here is to establish a common ground or goal, because you do have something in common or you wouldn't be sitting there interacting. So finding the common ground is where you can meet. And then speak honestly without fear. So I hope this gives you some steps, but I want to explain it in a more realistic way. And I'll give you an example of myself. I was working as a marketing director for a large firm of professionals, and there were 10 or 12 partners, I can't remember, in this firm, and there was one person that was very, very negative about marketing and me. And when I would go to meetings and present ideas, he would scoff at the marketing, and he kind of put me down as well as the marketing program. And so my job was to help each of these partners develop their own niche and develop their marketing skills and learn to be marketeers, which didn't come natural to these people were CPAs and lawyers. and business consultants. And so I was having great success with many of them, but I was terrified of this one partner because he threatened me and in my mind, and he didn't like me, and he didn't like what I was doing. And so I finally went home one night and realized I am so afraid of him, and he's one of the most powerful people in the firm, and he's not supporting me. So I sat down and I had this talk with myself, and I did just what I'm asking you to do. I said, what am I really afraid of? What am I feeling? And my feelings were I felt powerless. I felt like I wasn't very smart. He was smarter than I was. I felt like I was a single mother with 2 children, and I felt like he could be the one that could cause me to get fired if I don't do a good job. And how can I when he won't even talk to me? He sneers at me. And I was so terrified. And then I started connecting a little deeper and saying, but is it true? Am I incompetent? Am I not as smart? And it took me a little while to finally connect with my authentic self and realize I have the skills and the power and the energy to do a good job there, and I'm allowing this man to make me feel fearful, which is causing me to doubt my own skills. So I made a courageous step. I decided I was going to go talk to him, and it also occurred to me, if he's so harsh about all this, maybe he's afraid of something, and that's another key I want to tell you. Anybody that is difficult or a boss that's difficult to deal with, they are operating from some kind of fear themselves. And not that we can diagnose them, but when, for example, a micromanager is your boss, they're trying to control because they're afraid they don't have control. Or a bully type person, they're afraid of being weak, so they have to bully other people. So if we can try to have some compassion for their place too, although I know it's hard when you're in a situation. But it occurred to me that maybe this powerful man had some fear of marketing and therefore fear of me. So I made a commitment that in the morning I would go in, and I had been really just passing by his store. I was afraid to go in and talk to him, but I made a commitment that I was going to go in and sit down and talk to him. So as scared as I was, I just barely, lightly knocked on the door, hoping he wouldn't hear me, but he told me to come in. And so I explained to him that I was really dedicated with, the marketing program, but that he hadn't really participated, and I told him the truth. You're such a powerful partner in this firm, and you're so well respected in this community. I would really like to enlist your help in some of the marketing, and wanted to know if he would consider being a speaker at some of these other events with banks and workshops that we were planning. And to my shock and amazement, he said he would love to. And I realized then he was afraid of marketing, and he was afraid how he would get involved. And when I gave him the opportunity, he was happy to try it out. And he ended up doing an excellent job. And believe it or not, he ended up being one of my best supporters. So that's a real example how things can change in a relationship. They don't always change in that positive way. I have a million stories of different people that had different options where they either took a different role in the company, or they might have decided ultimately to leave the company. Some people have made all kinds of choices. But when you're in your authentic power, you'll discover you have a lot of choices. So I want to kind of summarize that by saying the biggest secret is that other person, your boss from hell, your coworker from hell, the other person, whoever that person is, they are not the cause of your pain and suffering. They are just a hook to the fear that is already in you. And what happens when you have the courage to face your fear, like I did with the boss that I had, you will start to discover that you're making up a lot of these emotions yourself and these thoughts about yourself, and you will be able to release them. And when you release them, you get over being afraid of other people. You give up your fear, and instead you can create your joy and the love. You can feel your sadness, but most of all, you can have freedom. freedom from the boss from hell and anybody else that has hurt you in your life. So that is a summary of what I want to share with you. But because you came today, I want to tell you a little bit about an offer I'm making that it's a really great package, and then we're going to take questions and answers. And you can, if you have a question you'd like to ask, it's confidential. You can just write it in the chat box, your question. And but in the meantime, let me just tell you briefly about this plan I put together for just webinar attendees. I'm including my 8-week personal restoration plan workbook, and it is a very in-depth, powerful program that it's self-directed. You do it yourself in your own time, but it gives you the steps to discover what the fears are that are holding you in, maybe in a position that you don't want to be in. It gives you 8 weeks of practices to learn how to be present and discover how you can give up these limiting beliefs that sometimes hold you back. And it happens to all of us. You're not alone, but we can all get through them and reach a new level of confidence and happiness and joy in our life. It's called The Path to Authentic Power, a personal restoration plan. Ultimately, I believe we restore the workplace with trust and compassion when we each individually work on our personal restoration to our inner spiritual greatness, our true identity. Then I've included an audio book called Healing the Workplace Culture that you can read. You can listen in the car. What you'll do is download it. You can put it on a CD or on your phone or an iPod or anything that you have as a listening device, and that's a retail value of $29. And then I'm including another MP3 that you can listen to that's, I sell at retail for $20, but it's called How to Deal with Rivalry in the Workplace, and it goes into more depth than we've had a chance to today. And then I am throwing in a 30-minute personal telephone or Skype coaching call with me. For it's the value of that is $100 right there. That's a $100 value. And all you have to do is call me or email me, and we'll set up a time, and you can have a half hour to talk in person about what your personal issues are that are causing you to have to deal with the boss from hell. And then I'm also including my autographed copy of The Extraordinary Workplace, including the shipping, which is a retail value of $20. So the total value is $190. For anybody that's on the webinar, it's only $97. And it's at my DannaBeal.com web special. I'll show you what the page looks like. Now, I'm going to add one more thing. Of all times, my server has gone down on my website, and it's up right now, but for the last 2 days, I've had some issues. So this is what the page looks like, and all you have to do is, just add it to your cart through PayPal, or you can use a Visa. If the page doesn't come up, just in case, I'm also going to be sending you an email with another way to do this if you decide you want to do more. But that's what my package is, and I think it's a really, really good one. I think if you really are serious about getting to the depth of your authentic self, this would help you and increase your potential in everything. So let's start with some questions and answers, and let me take a look here. I've got a screen. If anyone has written in, let me read you a question here. Somebody has written to me and said, my boss is a micromanager. Oh, I just mentioned that. She said, I need her permission for everything, and I'm starting to doubt myself. If I don't follow every little detail and report every time that she wants me to, she freaks out. Well, I can't see you all, but if I asked you how many of you have had a micromanager for boss, because I've asked this of live audiences all over the country, every hand would go up. So a micromanager is really, really trying to do a good job. And they're operating from a fear. And usually your boss has another boss that they are feeling pressure from. And then they push that pressure down to you. So a micromanager is trying to manage you to get everything done, and they use a lot of control. And the control actually backfires. The micromanager doesn't understand that, because when you're looking over your shoulder or feeling you have to do everything in detail and do lots of reports, etc., it's like putting a bird in a bird cage. The person can no longer work at their highest and fullest potential. And this person that has written to me is describing that situation. So let's go back to the steps. What would be the first thing that you would need to do if you're dealing with a micromanager? Well, you'd have to take a look yourself and say, why am I feeling threatened? What are the feelings that I'm having that this person is inciting in me? So I'm going to guess when somebody's micromanaging you, some of the feelings that you are probably feeling, the person that wrote this or anyone else on the call, you're probably feeling that they don't trust you. And you might feel they don't have confidence in you. And if you are really, really looking and doing a deep search, you may recognize that it brings up some feelings of shame or inadequacy that you have that stem clear back from when you were a little child. As you recognize that and recognize your fears, that's when you can start to realize the fears aren't real. The fears, I don't mean they aren't real, but they're not really coming from your micromanager boss from hell. They're coming from your feelings that they're true. So the question is, why do you believe it? Why do you believe those feelings? So if you can take the next step where you pause and you really decide to align and connect with your authentic self, you're going to be able to start to deal with this relationship in a different way. Now, one possibility is if you make common ground with this person, let me give you an example. You might say, I can sense that you're nervous about this project, and you and I have the same goal to get it completed, and I sense that it makes you anxious that we get all the steps done. So is that true? Are you feeling some anxiety? And if you are, I want to reassure you that I feel I have some really good skills or ideas that can help get this completed. But I sometimes work better if I can just tell you, check in with you periodically, rather than feeling quite such a tight rein on me. I want both of us to make sure we reach the goals. Now, a micromanager might recognize then that maybe they are holding on a little tight, and they may then offer to follow your suggestion. And you might be prepared to give them some ideas how you would deal with it differently and how you will reassure her or him that you're getting it done. Now, that's one favorable option that could turn out really, really well. I had a boss that got so upset and it panicked me. And all of a sudden, I did my own practice and realized she's only upset because she's worried something's going to go wrong. And I did an about face and said to her, it's going to be okay. Calm down. We can fix this. It was a situation that looked like it was critical, but it wasn't. And I was able to calm her down. So another step in this process is to realize that we're all just human beings and we all have our fears. And when you can communicate with that person on a human level, you can have a better response. Another option could be that you find another role in the company. Another example is someone that I knew that was having lots of success and great ideas, but her boss kept putting her down, and he was squelching her. And so we looked at other ways that she could give those same suggestions to someone else who might be in a higher position, not exactly going behind his back, but recognizing that he wasn't doing the best for the company to keep squelching her good ideas. Well, the long and short of that story is she got promoted. She rose up in the company. Today she's very successful in an international company because she had the courage to take steps beyond a little. He wasn't exactly a micromanager. He's kind of a discounting person. So I hope that helps you think about your boss from hell. Here's another one I have. I love my job but can't stand my boss. He has been there forever and he is a dinosaur. It's very similar to what I just described. He turns down any ideas I come up with. So some other options is, another option is to go through the same process. What's triggering you to be fearful? And once you get past your own fears and connect with your authentic self, when you're in a meeting, a next meeting, bring up the ideas maybe in a group and help get more support for your ideas. Again, there's also other options such as going to a different department, going to the HR and looking for a different department. But the real secret I'm trying to really share with you is you are not a victim. You don't have to stay there. You don't have to be treated that way. And when you come from your authentic self with also love and compassion, you can move through some of these most difficult situations. I know another example where a person did everything they could and finally realized they couldn't do it anymore. And they decided they actually wanted to leave the company, but they were afraid. But they put together a plan. They tried everything to communicate and work with their boss, and they finally realized it was never going to work, but they went to the HR and put together a plan to exit. And it included a severance package and a good recommendation from the people that would be able to help the career. And that person later reported, as scary as it was to leave, because most of us do want to support our family and we have goals and financial goals, and that's one of the main reasons it's so scary in a workplace. But this person reported that leaving the company was the best thing she ever did, and it actually opened doors to things that she would have never done if she stayed in that company. So I want to say to all of you, if you're fearful about losing your job, I have very rarely talked to somebody that hasn't said it ultimately was the best thing they ever did. Either when they lost a job, they were laid off, or they quit. It means the energy there is not enough energy to stay there anymore, and you, as a human being, will find a new job, new position, or maybe even become an entrepreneur and do what you really love anyway. I'm going to take one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up because we've been almost 45 minutes, and that's what I scheduled it to be. Here's one. My boss is a female, and so am I. She is so competitive, and I think she is jealous of me. I feel like she stands in my way. Okay, we often hear that women bosses can be very difficult. I think it can be different than with a male or female, but there's so many unique situations. But the question I would ask for this person is to do the inner path and ask herself, what if she thinks the boss is jealous of her? What in herself does she think might be causing her boss to feel that way? In other words, don't just project it onto your boss that you are causing her to feel jealous. Maybe there's something in you that makes you try to be superiors. Even if you're not the boss, you may think that by acting in a way that makes her feel jealous might be effective way to deal with somebody in a relationship. So I'm asking you to think about your own ownership. And underneath that, if you think about it, where did you first have this feeling that somebody else that you want to work with or need to have a relationship with is jealous of you? And I have many stories, but I recall a lady that had 7 sisters, and she used to tell me she was kind of the ugly duckling growing up. But I noticed in her workplace, she grew up to be a beautiful, tall blonde, and she was dressed in beautiful clothes. And I noticed that she thought people were jealous of her. Well, sometimes we do almost the opposite of what we grew up with. So again, the key is to be authentic, to own your own feelings, recognize that the boss has their own fears. It's not personal what they're saying to you, and that if you can establish common ground, that you're both working for the same team, Miraculous things can happen in that relationship, or you can find other options in the same company or possibly leave the company. But most of all, know that your authentic self is going to take you on a journey where you need to go. But your ego self can keep you trapped sometimes in what I think looks like an invisible prison. But you hold the key. You're the one that can change it. So I know the workplace can be very complex. It's actually a gift. It's a gift when you can discover what your own fears are, because you can release those fears once you see them. But as long as you attack and counterattack and overreact, you don't even know your own fears, and they'll continue to haunt you the rest of your life. And I say stop and turn around and face your fears, and then stand up with courage in any relationship, regardless of what the roles are in that particular organization. And the result is, and the outcome will be, you will be set free when you do this. So I don't have time for any more questions, but again, the web special, it's dannabeal.com/web special, and I will send you an email in case this isn't working. I also want to announce that I'm doing a webinar. Here I need to close my little control panel so I can show you something. The next webinar is next Tuesday, and I will be joined by my very good friend and fellow author. He's a social worker, a therapist. He has many, many years experience. He's written some great books on being authentic and going home to your authentic self. And so we're going to do a joint webinar next Tuesday, April 7th at 6 p.m. Leonard Simchek and Danna Beal together. And so we'll be sending you information about that and hope you can join us for that. And so I want to conclude by thanking you all for coming. Feel free to call me, email me anytime if you have more questions. I want you to know my services include coaching. I do workshops all the time, webinars, keynotes, and I do seminars. So, and if you'd like, I'd love you to join me on my Facebook page, Healing the Workplace Culture. That's my dedication, helping to create a workplace where we replace fear with trust and compassion. So thank you everybody for coming, and hope to see you next Tuesday. Good night.